Hello everyone, welcome to today's school talk session. My name is Elizabeth and I'm one of the speech and language therapists with Evelina London's Community Speech and Language Therapy team. Today I am going to be talking about storytelling and sharing with you a top tip of the week that you can use at home with your child to support their telling stories. Whether that's making up a new story, retelling their favourite story from a book or a film, or telling you about what they did in school that day. There's lots of different types of storytelling. Today's session is mainly aimed at primary school age children. However, the activity that we're going to do is very easily adapted to any age really, and similarly that top tip they can also be adapted across many age groups. So hopefully there's something for everyone in today's session. I am going to be using a visual timetable today to go through the activities. Visual timetables are a really useful tool to use to help children kind of know what's going to happen, know what to expect. Today I have one on a whiteboard, but you can use absolutely anything. If you don't have something like this at home, you can just use a scrap of paper, or you could use some objects or something, anything visual really that can outline the steps within an activity or across a period of time, across the day, across the morning, across the week even. As I said, I'm using a whiteboard, but there's any way to do it. So if you look back through some of our previous videos, you'll see therapists using visual timetables in lots of different ways. And we have some school talk sessions that delve a little bit deeper into using visuals and visual timetables for different types of activities, like when you're going out and about. So do take a look back through some of our previous videos. So our visual timetable for today, I'm going to be sharing with you a tip of the week. We're going to do an activity, and today's activity is going to be making up a story using some real objects, everyday objects that I've just found around the house. So listen along with me today if you like, and then you could maybe try out something similar at home, or in school if you're a teacher or TA watching today, with your own selection of objects and with your child or a group of children that you work with. After we've finished the activity, I'll do a bit of a recap or a summary of what we've been talking about today, and then we'll be finished and we'll say goodbye. So our first top tip of this week, this week's top tip is to tell stories to get stories. And there's a couple of ways that we can sort of use this tip, I suppose, when interacting with children. There's a few different ways we can use a tip like this to tell stories to get stories. And the first way that we can interpret this tip is model storytelling. Children need to hear story structures and examples from other people, so that they can kind of feel confident and get those skills in telling stories themselves. If they've never heard a story, or if they haven't heard lots of stories, it's going to be difficult for them to know how you tell a story. So tell your children stories, whether it's kind of old tales, retelling film plots or book plots, and retelling, remember this is what we did at the weekend, any stories that are important to your culture or religion, and tell them in the language that you are most comfortable with as well, that you're most kind of comfortable and confident with. A few weeks ago, Lauren, one of our SLTs, did a school talk session about using visuals to help your child share their news about their school day. So you can take a little look back at that from some ideas of how to support that specifically. Linking to our tip today, you can show your child how to do this, how to share their news about their school day, by doing it yourself. So, tell your child about your day. And then that will give them a kind of structure and a model of how they can maybe share some things from their day in school. So that's one way to interpret it, is model storytelling. The other way that we can kind of tell stories to get stories is telling stories to practice active listening. Now, listening is a really, really important skill that children need, that kind of underlies storytelling. And it's something that some children really do find it very difficult to listen and to listen actively. So before you maybe launch into getting them to tell their own stories, maybe first what we want to do is have them practice listening to some stories. And there's some things that we can do to make that easier and more exciting and engaging. So one thing to try is maybe just if you're telling a story, have your child, or if you're working with a group of children, listen out for a sort of keyword that they've got to listen out for, and do something when they hear it. So if you're, I don't know, telling a story about a farm, each child's got a different animal to look out for. As when they hear their animal being mentioned, they can, I don't know, clap their hands, put their hand in the air, shake a shaker, whatever it is. But then they're really having to listen out for that word, and they're really going to have to engage and listen to the story. So that's another way. So practice active listening through storytelling. And then the last thing, which I'm going to demonstrate today, how we can tell stories to get stories, is by using objects and visuals to practice making up stories together. So, you can make a story out of anything, and it can be sometimes a bit more engaging if there's a real object involved. And it's all about making up a story together. So today I'll just be making up one myself. But if you're doing this with your child or a group of children, you can really get them to kind of come up with some of the ideas themselves, and make a story that they're going to really enjoy. Maybe it's a bit silly and they've come up with the ideas themselves. So that's our top tip for the week, is to tell stories to get stories, and some ideas of how you might interpret and apply that. And with your child at home, or children that you work with in school settings. So our tip of the week is finished. So I'll give it a wipe there. And next, it's time for our activity. So as I said, our activity this week is making up a story with some objects that I've gathered from around the house. So if you're listening with your child now, I'm going to show you some of the objects that I've found for the story today. So I've got a stuffed giraffe. There he is. I've got an orange. I've got a plastic plate. I've got a little magnetic fish. And a little decorative elephant. So those are the objects. I've just thrown them in a bag, and we're going to make up a story that uses some of these objects. So, one sunny day, Jerry the giraffe was walking across the grassland. There he goes, walking across the grassland. What next? It was a hot and dry day. So after a while, Jerry got very thirsty. I'm parched, gasped Jerry. Just then, as if by magic, a mysterious pool appeared in front of Jerry. This is just what I needed, exclaimed Jerry, and with a big gulp, he drank the entire pool. But just then, Jerry started to feel a bit peculiar or a bit strange. Like that pool wasn't full of water after all. Now let's see what else I've got in my bag from what happened next in our story. Oh, I've got the little fish. I've got this little elephant as well. I wonder, should we use the elephant next or the fish? Let's use the elephant. Let's use the elephant next. Suddenly, Jerry started to notice his long neck was shrinking. And his nose was getting longer. And all of his spots were disappearing. And his ears were getting bigger. Jerry was shocked to find he turned into an elephant. Oh no! Maybe our fish can come now. Jerry, now an elephant, saw a little fish flopping about where the pool used to be. The fish said, "You must find the magic orange tree to turn you back into a giraffe." And poof! The fish disappeared. "Oh, what is this magic orange tree? What nonsense is this?" cried Jerry. But just then, far away in the distance, Jerry saw a little glimmer of orange. So he started off, plodding around, but Jerry wasn't used to being an elephant, and he kept tripping up over his trunk. It kept getting in the way. Before too long, Jerry reached a tree with one single orange right at the tippy top of the tree. Jerry used his new trunk to suck the orange and plop it in his mouth. Hum. Suddenly, Jerry could start to see the tree getting further below him, as if his neck was getting longer again. And he noticed his ears were getting smaller, and his nose was going back to being small as well. The spots came back. Jerry was a giraffe again. Hooray! And he trotted back home into the sunset. And he's not going to drink from a mysterious pool again. There we go. That's our story all about Jerry Giraffe and his adventures as an elephant. Okay, so that was just one example of how we can use just a selection of everyday objects to make up a story. So our activity's finished. I'll just summarise and go over what we've talked about today. So I've just done this myself, but if you're doing this with your child or with a group of children, you can do things like get their ideas for each object. So for example, I offered a choice at one point between what object we might use next. You might allow children to take turns to decide what's going to happen with that object or what object might come next. If they have trouble kind of sitting and listening for too long, you might get them to have a bit of a movement break. Maybe they could have got up and walked around the room like poor Jerry as an elephant. Another thing that you can do is if you wanted to be able to kind of revisit a story, you might get them to draw pictures or write parts of the story, so you can kind of keep a note, and that way you can do it again. They can get familiar with this kind of story structure, and you can do things then like change the ending, or change bits of the story and see what happens then, or you might be able to do things like add in, if you're working on something like using describing words or trying to use more descriptive language. If you've kept the story, you can go back and add in more descriptive language as you go. And kind of on that, you can use this storytelling to work on a whole range of different areas, whether that's attention and listening, or whether that's using particular grammatical elements, or whether it's answering questions, or as I said, kind of adding describing words, or trying to add similes and things to make stories more exciting or engaging, especially if you're going to kind of use the same story over and over, as well as also just getting that experience of hearing a story structured where you have a beginning with characters, a problem arises, and then there's a resolution somewhere as well. So give it a go. Have a go at home or in school. See what happens if you fill a bag with some different objects. What kinds of stories can you and your children and the children you work with come up with? Also have a go using a visual timetable. As I said, just really useful to help children have an idea of what they can expect. It can help them with attention, listening and engagement. If they've got it written down somewhere or presented visually like this, what are the steps, or what is it that they're expected to do? And it's useful to kind of be able to see that end point as well for them, I think. If you have any questions, there is lots of information that you can find on Facebook, on this Facebook page. You can scroll through and we have posts and videos covering a whole range of different areas. Also, you can find our website. There's a link to it on the Facebook page, and that again has lots of information. There's kind of tips and advice and research and how to reach us and that kind of thing. If you have had a look through the Facebook page and had a look on the website, and you haven't been able to find the answer to your question or the information you were looking for, you can always get in touch with us through our email address, our contact SLT email address. Again, the link or the email address you can find on our Facebook page or our website. So do have a look there for that email address, and somebody will get back to you. Any parents, if your child goes to a school in Lambeth or in Southwark, you could attend one of our drop-in sessions, one of our school drop-in sessions. Currently, those are happening on the first Wednesday of every month, and it's just an opportunity for you to be able to speak to a speech and language therapist if you had something specific you wanted to discuss. And to find out how to access those, just speak to your school SENCO, who should have the information about how you can access that. So that's it. I think that's everything for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and enjoy getting creative and making up some stories at home, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.